Welcome back to episode number 13.
We're back.
We're back of the Pick and Roll podcast. I'm Campbell.
I'm Max.
Yeah, and we're back in the studio this week. Thank God for that.
Great to be back. I was missing it.
It's great to be back and with a lot of new audience members as well. We've been getting a lot of good feedback from the past couple episodes, so it'd be nice for you guys to see us in the actual studio.
Yeah, it's crazy. The best we've ever done is when we weren't in the studio, so maybe we stick to it.
Anyway, in today's episode, we're going to be running through our playoff first round matchups. And that includes all the first round matchups, and I briefly want to talk about the play-in as well and how that went.
No, it's a huge week in the NBA. First week of the playoffs. We've had the play-in. And I don't think it's let us down whatsoever. It's been everything I've expected and more with these matchups, which a lot of them are really the matchups that I wanted to see in the regular season. Like we've got the Indiana-Milwaukee one, which we've been talking about for ages because it's been so good all year. New York-Philly, all across the board really. Pels, Thunder, even though there's no Zion, it's really good throughout the entire playoffs.
Clippers, Mavericks.
Yes, definitely. And even the second round matchups, like depending on which teams move on, we're going to have some great second round matchups. Milwaukee v Philly will go crazy. It'll feed families.
It will go crazy.
It will go crazy. We'll feed families. No, but yeah, so excited. It's going to be a huge next 5 or so weeks going into May. So yeah, super exciting.
Yeah, but first, I just wanted to touch on the play-in and not the specific games really, but I just wanted to kind of brush over the play-in as a whole. And do you think the NBA should keep doing the play-in? What are your thoughts on that?
It's an interesting one because I don't know how I feel about it in some years, because sometimes you've got like a 9 and 10 seed that are 5 games behind the 8
Hawks
seed.
and Bulls.
Exactly. That's what I was sort of referencing. So in that case, those two teams don't really deserve it, in my opinion, and therefore I don't know if they should really be in contention. But maybe instead of like that sort of tournament sort of thing, maybe they could do like an 8v9 matchup instead of a 7-8, 10-9, because sometimes you're going to get a 10 seed that's just way below the standard, because that was the Hawks until they caught up and the Bulls fell behind a little bit and it was a bit closer there. But yeah, maybe an 8v9, but a lot of years it's good and you get that sort of taste of the playoffs before it comes around. You get to see teams like last year, Miami. We got a little taste of what their run would be, and I think if there was no playing game for them, then maybe their run wouldn't have been so. They wouldn't have caught that stride into the playoffs, and maybe they wouldn't have gotten to the finals. So it's an interesting one. I wouldn't eliminate it personally, but
yeah, because on one hand, you've got, yes, these teams don't really deserve it, you know, the Hawks and the Bulls especially. And in traditional NBA seasons, teams would strive for that 8 seed, and it kind of switches it up a little bit. And you know me, I like my tradition. I like to keep it the same. But on the other hand, it has led to a lot of interesting matchups, a lot of close games. I'm thinking back to Curry and LeBron a couple of years ago. That was a crazy matchup. So that's what I'm thinking about. And obviously that's a huge moment. Obviously it makes the NBA more money and it leads to more highlights. So I would say keep it around for now. See how it goes the next couple of years. But if it keeps happening where teams that are way below the standard are getting into the play, and there's no real point of keeping it around if they're just going to get discarded straight away anyway. Yeah,
this year it sort of went very fluently because we had the 7 and 8 seeds in both conferences. So I don't think this year was a huge issue for in terms of it. But like one time you might have an injury with a 7th seed that deserves to be in the playoffs, and then all of a sudden they lose to the 8 seed, they lose to the 9 or 10, whoever wins that, and then they're out of the playoffs entirely when they don't deserve it. Maybe they've got an injured player for 4 games and that just happens to be when the play-in is. And no Zion injury if there's no play-in as well. So
that's true. Yeah, a big factor there, and a big factor what we're going to talk about soon in that matchup. Also, I want to say that I was correct in predicting the Bulls would win over the Hawks.
Shout out to you.
I told you.
Did I say
You said
Hawks?
Hawks.
Yeah. Damn. I underestimated the Chicago Bulls. Even though they're not a playoff team, I think you were right. In retrospect, they are better than the Hawks. And we saw that.
Barely. Kobe White is better than the Hawks. Yeah.
He was. He dropped 40 that game, didn't
42.
he? 42. And then the next game, he had a complete stinker.
13.
That's why Maxey is the most improved player, and will win that. But have
He
you
already
seen
has.
that? Have you seen the updated? Did he win this morning?
Yeah, like 12 minutes ago.
Come on.
Shout out Tyrese Maxey.
I was about to say to you, have you seen the updated rankings? Because NBA media, whoever votes on it, sometimes they release it and then people tally it up and then you get a good idea of how the votes are going. And I think it was Maxey by only like a couple votes. So, come on.
That's the first award that's been announced. So
hopefully that gives him a bit of a confidence boost going into the next game. Not just MIP, maybe MVP next year. I'm joking.
it could happen.
I don't know.
Don't count him out.
I don't know if he's got that in him. But
we're going to go into our playoff matchups now. And where do you want to start for this one?
Miami versus Boston in the East.
Yep. Look, the matchups throughout the season, Celtics won 3 of 3 of those matchups with an average winning score of 15 points.
We did the same research.
The same research.
Let's go.
Straight off the bat, not looking good for the Heat.
Not at all.
For the most important player, I've got Jason Tatum. We're recording this post the first couple of games of the playoffs. So we do have a good idea, but I will admit that only one matchup has been changed, my prediction. The other ones have stayed the same from what I thought originally. But we saw Jason Tatum have a triple-double, his third career triple-double, in the game against the Heat 2 days ago. So I've got Jason Tatum as the most important player for the Celtics because everyone's questioning his clutch ability. And I don't think it needs to come into question in this series particularly. But I still think it will leave a lasting impact on this Celtics run if Jason Tatum can get going early. It's not really so much about this series because, let's be honest, they're going to win this series. Touch wood. Nah, we'll see what happens.
It's I think the most clear out of any series
I think so
far.
as well.
No Jimmy Butler. It's pretty much over before it started, in my opinion. So
it is, yeah.
Continues.
Yeah, so Jason Tatum is the most important player for the Celtics. And then for the Heat, I've just got anyone who decides to step up. I said, yeah, Jimmy Butler not there.
Yeah.
Well, it's whoever wants to step up, Tyler Hero, Scary Terry. One of those players needs to go off their rocker to win this series in multiple games.
What are your keys to success?
So the keys to success for the Heat, I had aggressive defense, and also I know the Celtics are a good 3-point shooting team, but this is also links to the Celtics, what they need to do. And I said adapt if needed. You know how during the regular season there were games where the Celtics would shoot the three, they're not shooting well, and they would continue to shoot the three. They live or die by the three, which normally works out well for them. But yeah, for the Heat, I've just got aggressive defense forcing the Celtics into shooting bad, inefficient shots. And then if you're the Celtics, if that does happen, adapting and working more in the post, in the perimeter. And yeah, that's pretty much what I've got. But let's be honest, and I said how the series will go. I have sweep.
Bring the brooms out.
Celtics in 4. Yeah, that's me.
I'll run through mine. I've got a sweep as well. But my keys to success, okay, I'll do it in the order that you did. Most important player, for me, for the Miami Heat, it's Tyler Hero. But it's not that game altering. He had a really good playing game where he had a triple-double and he sort of picked up the Jimmy Butler production a little bit more. Not defensively, but offensively, being a playmaker and a rebounder.
But the last game against the Celtics, he had a stinker.
So I said keys to success for Miami was Jimmy Butler level production from Tyler Hero. And I had in brackets, not going to happen. So I've got very little hope for Miami. But then for me, the most important player for the Boston Celtics, I could have gone Tatum because obviously he's their best player. And that can be said for every one of these, that their most important player would be their best player. But for me, it's Kristaps Porzingis because the key with Kristaps Porzingis and the way that Boston have been able to win games consistently all year is they stretch the center away from the paint with Kristaps because he's a great 3-point shooter. You can have him in the corner. Play pop with pick and roll where it's pretty much undefendable because you got to have a big go back out to him unless you switch. So it's Kristaps for me because Bam is the best interior defender in this entire series and one of the best in the world. He's a top 3 finalist for Defensive Player of the Year. And so when you've got him out of the paint, even if you do live or die by the 3, which they've done all season, they've still got to get out to Kristaps Porzingis because he's such a good shooter. And that's going to open up lanes where even if they don't shoot very well, they can drive to the cup. And then it's going to be a late contest for Bam Adebayo in a lot of situations unless... I'm not even going to say unless because I don't think they'll work it out. I reckon it's just... It's a sweep.
It's a lost cause.
Exactly. And when you've got players coming out firing in the first game, you had Sam Hauser with 4 3-pointers. I think he was 4 or 5 or 6. And everyone else was shooting. They got up 45 shots or something around that area from 3, which is basically what they've done all season, just volume. And then when they hit, they win by a lot. When they don't hit, they can still get driving lanes because you've got to contest Porzingis and everyone else who can shoot 3s. So it's wraps.
Yeah, unless the Miami Heat, you like you said, Hero turns into playoff Jimmy, and all the role players step up as much as they did last year, it's not going to happen.
It's not the same team.
No, and even if they do, there's still not a guaranteed chance they win anyway. If
they do it one game, then maybe they can take one game from them, but you won't.
I still don't think so.
They can't do it every single game. They're not going to close out the series whatsoever. Miami was so good last year, but I think the downfall of Jimmy Butler is the death of them. And even if they had Jimmy Butler, I wouldn't give them much of a chance.
No, I still would have gone Celtics in 5. Probably.
They go on to the finals for most people in their brackets, and you had them winning it all. So.
I did.
So it's over for Miami. I'm sorry, Miami fans. I think they know it as well, but we got New York, Philly.
Do we want to do back and forth? So you take this one first.
Okay.
And this is interesting for a Philly fan to see what he thinks.
Do we want to? Obviously, there have been 2 games, by the way, so far. Both in New York, and one of them, in my opinion, was
a robbery.
Just a straight robbery. Because it came out this morning, they had the L2M reports because Philly filed a complaint to the league. And it turns out that there were 4 missed calls in the final minute. 1 against Philadelphia, 3 for Philadelphia. Obviously, there was the grab on Tyrese Maxey on the inbound play. The missed timeout from Nick Nurse.
Yeah, that was big when I was rewatching it.
They only miscounted one of them because apparently one of them, he didn't fully do it. He was sort of just waiting there because he wasn't sure whether he should call a timeout.
And that's fair enough. If you're like standing there like that shouldn't be counted.
It shouldn't.
No, if you're like about to call a timeout.
But he never called it, which is like you got to say timeout and you got to put your hands together.
Yeah, that's what I meant.
Yeah, but when he was on the floor, Tyrese Maxey was on the floor. He should have that should have been a timeout because he had the ball in both hands.
And as the ref, I don't blame. Like, you're supposed to be paying attention to that, but the game was also very heated. Your attention's going to be there. But also,
they missed so many calls.
I know. They did miss a lot of calls, though.
Like, even if they were watching the game and they say that they were watching the game intently and that's why they didn't see Nick Nurse, they missed 3 calls in the last minute. And one of them was actually when Tyrese Maxey was on the floor. I didn't see it, but I listened to Stephen A talk about it this morning because I've been so locked in on it.
He's been fuming.
I don't know if I'm a sore loser or whether this is
both.
Whatever you call it. But granted is the word I was trying to say. But even when Tyrese was on the floor, it was a hidden view from what you could see on TV. But Josh Hart hit his lower body and it actually caused him to fall. And Stephen A said he saw that, but I didn't see it, and I didn't see a single camera angle that saw it. But when the L2M report came out this morning, apparently that happened as well. So that gives me an even more reason to be a bit disappointed.
No, I understand. If I was a fan, you bet I would be fuming.
And we had the King back it up as well. He said what happened in Knicks in Philadelphia was a complete robbery. So when my sunshine comes out and says that, it must be true. But yeah, first two games, I don't think it was. Let me just go to my notes because I want to talk about the series going forward because we're already down to.
That's in the past.
It's in the past and there's nothing you can do about it. The Knicks are up 2-0, but there's no way I'm counting us out as a team because Joel, even playing on one leg, he dropped
34,
34 double, 7 assists, 6 or 7 assists, 2 blocks on one leg. He's about 50%. He says he's 70%, but the way he's running the court, he's not 70%. He's about 50%.
But is he going to get back to that level? This
is what I'm trying to say. Even if he doesn't, the Tyrese Maxey production isn't enough to keep us in the game, and then we just need a third person to come in.
But will they?
That's the thing. We've had the first 2 games where it hasn't happened. Buddy Hield, I think he's never played a playoff game in his entire career. Could you believe it? Never.
Really?
Yes. These were his first 2 playoff games because he played for the Kings, played for the Pacers, played for the Pels. All of those years, they weren't good. Last year, Indiana didn't make it. And then this year, he's come out. He's hit 1 shot. I think he hit a midi. But this is not what we picked him up for whatsoever. No. And I think it's from a lack of shooting the ball as well. He shot the ball like 3 times this entire series, and he's only hit 1 shot. Tobias Harris, we're paying you $40 million. Hit a shot, play defense. Last game was okay.
And also, even, defensively, we were looking, when you sent me a video of the final play against the Knicks, and when Batum wasn't boxing out Hardenstein as he got the offensive rebound.
That lost us the game. All of the rest could have been avoided if Batum had just boxed out. So it's inexcusable. But let me go to my notes. I'm going to stop rambling because a lot of this I'll bring up later. So the keys to success for New York is Josh Hart's continued shooting. Because
he's on fire.
Yeah. He does absolutely everything else in the game to a T. There's nothing that he can't do on the NBA court except for shoot. Because he's become a facilitator. In the last year, he's become New York's almost primary facilitator when you don't have Jalen Brunson passing up looks after doubles or whatever. So Josh Hart hitting three or four threes each game is so important for the Knicks. He's scored 20, I think he's averaging 21 points on the series, which for Josh Hart, that's
just insane.
That's a 10-point increase from his averages.
Yeah, I had him on my fantasy team in the season, and he was not averaging 21, I can tell you that.
No. And he's been key for them because a lot of the time, in the first game at least, he hit 3 of his 3-pointers in the last 6 minutes of the game. A lot of them heavily contested. One of them heavily contested. I won't say the others were. But it was a part of our game plan. We've shut out Brunson completely because we've doubled him. We've had Batum on him playing really well. Kelly Oubre, one of the best wing defenders this entire playoffs already out of all matchups. And we've kept Jalen Brunson to 35% shooting over the entire series, which is something that is really important. And it's really kept us in this series. But we always help defend. We always bring the help defender off of Josh Hart because that's what a lot of teams have been doing in the last quarter of the season anyway, and he hasn't converted these 3-pointers. When he comes back to Philly, I don't think he's hitting those. In New York, sure, you've got the crowd behind you, but in Philly, it's not happening. I'm sorry. That's 2 games in Philly where I think Josh Hart will not be as much of a contributing factor.
Yeah, well, the chances are that, he can't keep this up for a whole series.
Even in New York, yeah.
Watch him prove us wrong, but the chances are.
But I think the defense we're playing on them isn't bad, and I think eventually it will convert to his misses, and then it'll be a good scheme for us defensively. But another key for New York, I've got 2 here, is continue crashing the offensive boards aggressively. Side note, Hartenstein shouldn't be expected to lock down Embiid. He's out there for O boards and help defender. Because nobody's going to stop Embiid. Even if he's 50%, he's still going to drop 34 on you on one leg. I love saying that because he's so good. He's out there to offensive rebound and play help defender, which he did exceptionally last game. First game he wasn't as good. They played Mitchell Robinson the last quarter, pretty much the entire quarter, because He wasn't having that. Hartenstein wasn't playing as well. But he's figured it out in the second game. He made pretty much the winning play for them last game with a chase down block, help defensive block on Tyrese Maxey. It's pinned him against the backboard. That's the fastest dude in the league, and you've just chased him down and blocked him off the backboard. He's pretty crazy. And then the offensive rebound. He made 2 super, super important plays in the last minute of the game. That's Batum not boxing out, but Philly is a really bad. I think they're bottom 4 in offensive rebounds and rebounding in general in the entire season. So when you've got Knicks, who are one of the better offensive rebounding teams, the amount of second chance points they get, there's no arguing that they're going to get a ton more possessions than Philadelphia, and that leads to more opportunities, more shots. We got the 3-point shot from Dante DiVincenzo to win the game off an offensive board. So
what's your final prediction?
So I'm gonna say my Philadelphia case to success. Lock in on rebounding, because the offensive rebounding, it can be negated. We just need to box out. It's been like that the whole game. As we said, there was the example of Batum not boxing out, but that happened all game. That's just not one rare example. Even though last game in the first 3 quarters we did it pretty well, I'm not mad. But in the last quarter, when we just want to run on offense and beat them on the break, because that's what we're really good at, we just don't get offensive boards. Sorry, not beat them on the break. Beat them defensively on the break and get back. And then my next point is the third player needs to step up to the plate offensively, and that's maybe our $40 million player.
Perhaps you might want to get that value out of him now.
Exactly. And that's the reason why I don't think we've sat Embiid. If we wanted to sit Embiid and just call this series a dud because Embiid's out, we're not going to make the finals, we could have just said that. But we've got Tobias on the last year of his contract. If we don't make it past the second round, then he's going to be the biggest overpay in NBA history.
Wow.
Absolutely. He hasn't made an All-Star game. He hasn't been close to making an All-Star game. We're paying him $40 million a year.
And you look at all the contracts, but it sounds pretty bad.
It's ridiculous. It is worse than anyone could ever imagine.
John Wall?
No. It's worse than John Wall, because John Wall for the first 2 years was at least an All-Star.
Yeah.
But yes, we need a third player to step up. And we haven't had it all series. I think the next best scorer in the team last game was 11 points. And then we had a bunch of 5-point games from everyone else on 30% shooting. We just need, if we have one more player step up on offense, just hit consistent shots in the corner, then I think we can completely turn this series around. Most important player, Josh Hart. I think I already said that.
Yep.
And then Embiid for Philadelphia, because his on-off numbers can't be ignored. We're winning by, I think the total plus minus is like 30 points when he's on the court. Even one leg. He was on one leg, and we're up by 30 whenever he's on the court. How many times
has this guy said on one leg?
And then also I've got Maxey, because without him we'd be screwed offensively. If we didn't have Maxey, we would be losing these games by 10 plus points. So consistently. How the matchup will unfold from here on, Hart will come back to earth. When he moves away from home, when he's on the road. And the final series prediction is 4-3. Philly. 76ers, as long as Embiid remains intact. Philly win back-to-back games at home, winning back momentum for Game 6 in New York.
Okay. I'm going to take the floor here.
Mm-hmm.
So this is the series where, because I made these notes before Game 2, and I was having the biggest toss-up in my head of, how these matchups would go and how the series would end up. And it's probably this and, spoiler, T-Wolves and Suns is probably the two that I had the biggest back and forths about in my head.
Mm-hmm.
I'm just going to go through my most important players in the series. I have Tyrese Maxey for the 76ers because of the question marks around Joel and how often he can stay on the floor. Maxey's playing sensational. You can see with his speed, he's getting to the cup pretty much at will at the moment.
That first game was ridiculous.
Yeah, and minus the Hartenstein block, he was zooming past. And there were points where he seemed unstoppable, especially in the first game, which I did end up getting to watch. Yeah, so I've got Tyrese Maxey, and playing through Tyrese Maxey when Joel is not on the floor is the key, and getting other players involved. But it's up to the other players, of course. But Tyrese Maxey is my most important player for the Sixers. And I've got Brunson for the Knicks because, like we predict, if Hart returns to his regular statistics and regular shooting splits, Brunson needs to step up if the Knicks are going to win this series. He's been minimised. His impact has been minimised across these 2 games, and it's been lucky that his role players have stepped up and filled that gap. But you can't bank on it being every game if you're a Knicks fan. So you're going to need to see playoff Brunson activate. And who's guarding Brunson?
It's Oubre and Batum, mainly Oubre.
Yeah.
Depends who's on the floor.
I know Oubre's a solid defender.
This series especially.
Especially, but I'm saying if you're Jalen Brunson and you're a superstar in the league, best guard in the East, you should be able to overcome that for at least a couple games and put together some good performances.
He's getting these shots off as well. It's not like he's getting blocked or the ball is getting hit out of his hands when he's going out. He's getting shots. They're just heavily contested. And when you're a really good player, you hit those shots a lot of the time. So I think Brunson has the ability, even the way he's being defended, to drop 30 points plus. But it just hasn't happened for him because he can't get in a rhythm because he can't get an open shot.
Yeah, and then my keys to success for the 76ers, keep Joel healthy, because if he gets fully injured, it's over. It's done. So that's a real key for them, because you have to find the fine line between playing him so you're in these playoff games and also not playing him so much that at a point he just reaches his breaking point and it's over. That's another year gone. And also I've got play through Maxey. Take that burden off of Embiid. We've seen what Tyrese Maxey can do and what he has done in these first 2 games. So just play through him a little bit more. I'd like to see. Obviously, I keep talking about the 3rd star, but that's also, crucial, I think.
Agreed.
And then for the Knicks, I've got all players step up. Again, this is before game 2 that I made these. But this is talking about the role players. It's talking about Josh Hart, McBride, etc.
McBride is stepping up, unreal.
Which they have.
He's a heater. Literally, whenever he comes off the bench, it's an instant point, and then the Knicks go on a run.
And he's a Crows fan. Shout out McBride.
Shout out the LA Crows.
So I think that's key for them, especially with Brunson going through this downward slope, and especially if he does dip back up. If the role players are still getting these shots up on an efficient shooting, and even DiVincenzo, let's see, a bigger performance. He did hit that clutch shot, but we've seen what he's been capable of this whole year. So it really comes down to that grit and grind of the role players of New York, I think, if they're going to win this series. And the previous matchups I had written down, Knicks won 3 or 4, but that is without Joel. So let's be honest, that doesn't really matter too much.
Yeah, Embiid didn't play 3 or 4.
Yeah.
But in that one game, they did win by like 30.
The Knicks?
Yeah, when they had him.
So was that when Joel just came back, or was that before?
That was before. That was just when Joel came back, but it was straight after the trade for OG, and that was when they went on that 5-game run where they won by 15 every single game. So,
so it's not too important of data, and then how the series will go. Again, before game 2, I said 76ers steal game 2. Knicks steal one on the road. Embiid and Maxey, massive game 7. But watching game 2, I've changed my mind. I'm going Knicks in 7. Because unfortunately, when a team goes 2-0 up in the series, I can't remember the exact stat.
For Philly, it's bad. For Philly, it's bad. I think it's 0-11 when another team is...
and I'm not a stat head, but I think it was between 72 and 78% of the time, the team that goes 2-0 up wins the series. So if you're splitting hairs, which I was, I've been thinking about this all week, trying to think who's going to win this series. Eventually, the statistics lead me to go to the Knicks. But I wouldn't be surprised if the 76ers won. But I'm just going to go Knicks in 7.
You know this better than anyone. What happened last time Nick Nurse was down 0-2?
I do know, in the Eastern Conference Finals.
In 2019.
But, of course, completely different teams.
Yeah, I'm just
Completely
saying
different team.
he's no Doc. Sorry, this isn't a shot at Milwaukee. He's no Doc Rivers where he's gonna blow leads
No.
or not make comebacks. This is Nick Nurse, who's
No, he isn't.
a top 3 coach in the NBA.
But I'm saying if the Knicks manage to steal a Philly home game, it's over. Like I don't think they're going to come back. I reckon they still will push it to the maximum. And again, this all depends on Joel's health. But yeah, I think Knicks in 7, very, very close for me.
I completely agree with you if Knicks win a home game, away game, because
I think they might.
you think they
I
might
just
steal
feel
it.
There's no reason. I just, sometimes you have to go with your gut, and that's
Usually
what I feel.
Philly home games are very we've had a good record at home, but this year it hasn't been as good.
Yeah,
So
that's what I feel. But
it's interesting.
yeah, a bit of a split on that one. So it'll be interesting to see when we come back.
But both 7-game series. It just depends on what happens in the
it's
last game.
insanely close.
It is.
Before the series begun, or about a week ago when the series was set in stone, I was like, oh yeah, that's good for Philly. Philly will take that easily. But from the matchups we've seen, I've realized that it's not as black and white as I
Straightforward,
thought.
no.
Especially with Joel not
Injured.
being at full health.
Yeah.
Yeah, because when you're a 7 seed match with a 2 seed, which seems beatable, I was like, oh yeah, Philly and Milwaukee next. No, I'm not playing. But but yeah, it could go either way. And I just think the Knicks just had that little bit more involvement from all their players.
Definitely.
So
100%.
that's the reason.
That is fair enough. Topical. Milwaukee is next. The 3v6. Huge game in game 1. Damian Lillard, 35
points in the first half. Big donut in the second, but it didn't really matter because we got up by like 20.
Yeah.
And
I'm
coasted for
going
the
to
rest
let
of the
you
game.
cook here first because I know you have a lot to say.
Yeah, okay. So for the most important players of the series, I've gone Dame. Because obviously we've seen if we can get playoff Dame for half a game, we'll win the game. Especially if Giannis comes back. They don't know when he's going to come back. Probably sometime this series or early next series.
Half injuries, I don't know. You don't risk that because we saw what happened to KD a few years
that's
ago.
what I'm saying. If Dame can put this series away, then there's no need for him to come back until the next series. So that's key for him to play well. And of course, Chris Middleton and Bobby Portis need to come with him as well as second and third options with Dame on the floor. But it's up to Dame. It's up to him shooting efficiently. We saw in the first half that they completely shut the Pacers down. We're up by 25 at one point, I think, and just coasted the rest of the game. It's all about that initial impact, and I'm scared that if Dame doesn't shoot efficiently, that we've seen all season, that when he shoots over 50%, I can't remember the exact thing, but we only lost 2 games when he shot over 50%. When he shot below 40 or whatever it was, the records were not in our favor. So it really comes down to good shot selection, taking shots he can take, and we know he can make them from nearly anywhere on the floor. It's just about being a bit smarter in playoff basketball and reading the pace, which I back our team to do as with a bit more playoff experience. I hope anyway. And then for the Pacers, I've got Hallie, 7 field goal attempts in the first game. When you're down 20, you just need to shoot the ball. As the superstar, as an efficient 3-point shooter, as a great distributor of the ball, I don't think he had that many assists either, like an outrageous amount. I think he had like maybe 7, 8.
Not too sure, but it certainly didn't look like he had many.
No, like 9 points, 8 assists is not enough from your main producer on the offensive end. And if the Pacers want to stay a chance in this series, he needs to get going. We've seen him be streaky post All-Star break in terms of form, and they really need him to step up right now. So if he can't, I don't think they really stand a chance. Even with, if Dame isn't so efficient for the whole series, he will have games where he's going to step up. And if Tyrese can't match even Chris Middleton or Bobby Portis in this series, then it's
They do have
hard.
Siakam dropping 35 though.
He did play really well. But I think it's not Siakam's role to be the primary scorer and the primary offensive end producer. And yeah, he's going to have games where he's going to go, 36 points. But that's not going to be every game. You can't allow for your best player to shoot only 7 field goal attempts per game.
Especially when
in the
Brook is so
playoffs.
good in the paint defensively. We saw in game 1 he had bunch of blocks, but
And
it went beyond
poster.
that. Yeah. Oh, that was crazy.
That was crazy.
It went beyond that though, because even when Brook wasn't blocking shots, he was making it super hard on the defense, which he's done all year, and that's why last year he was a Defensive Player of the Year candidate. So he's still got that. Sorry, continue.
Oh no. And then case of success. This is when I didn't know if Giannis would come back or not. I said winning until Giannis returns. He probably won't if we can get it done early enough. And I said control the pace, because we talked about earlier, I think it was last episode or episode before, how the Pacers, no pun intended, they play at such a high pace. And they were the fastest and the best offense in the league. So I think as the playoffs roll through and we see scores drop, we see the pace of the game slow down, I think it's important for the Bucks to get good looks through Dame, through Chris Middleton, efficient shots they know they can make, and really slow down the paces on the fast break, slowing down the movement of the offensive possessions. Yeah, and I think that's really key to us winning this series, and we did do it in the first game, so I have faith that it can continue that way. But the Pacers, I've got minimize Dame / Tyrese get going. We talked about Tyrese before. He needs to shoot the ball more, needs to be more attack-minded. And with Dame, get the ball out of his hands. If you're going to get beaten by the Bucks without Giannis, you're going to make Chris Middleton, Bobby Portis, even Brook Lopez try and beat you, because they're not as efficient on their best nights. And you got to make the second or third option beat you. You're going to have to double Dame. If he's playing like he did in game one, the whole series, you're going to have to double him. You're going to have to get the ball out of his hands.
Even when you double him, I don't think you're going to stop him though. Because unless you pick him up from...
No, I agree. But you might as well try to minimize that impact. He's not going to shoot the ball as much if you're doubling him from high up. And a little callback to Nick Nurse beating the Bucks in 2019 is that getting the ball out of Giannis's hands. This is just the example that came to my head. I think in that series, Eric Bledsoe and co shot 16% from three. And the Bucks do have good 3-point shooters, but we have seen, Malik Beasley has been shaky lately, etc. Pat Bev, he can knock down a few, but he's not the most consistent.
Mm-hmm.
So if you're going to get beaten, you might as well try to get the ball out of Dame's hands and make the other Bucks role players beat you.
Mm-hmm.
And then the previous matchups, obviously, the Pacers won 4 out of 5, which is crazy.
This is what makes it really interesting.
When I saw the Pacers, I'm like, I'd rather verse them than the 76ers. But, I'm still scared, because if you lose, it's embarrassing. It's funny. Everyone's going to laugh at you.
I don't know.
History.
Well, if Giannis is not playing, then I don't think it's much of...
No, but...
I wouldn't laugh. But because in entirety, the Pacers are healthy and they're the best offense in the league. Even though the playoffs is more suited to defensive teams and low-paced teams, which brings me to a point that I was going to say about the fast break. You were saying limiting fast break opportunities and defending on the fast break, whatever. When the pace is so slow and the ball doesn't get turned over nearly as much as the regular season, I think the Pacers are going to find it really hard to get on the fast break, because they're not a good defensive team as it is. So I don't think the Milwaukee Bucks need to really worry about that. Even though that the Pacers are the best fast break team in the league, they're not going to get those fast break opportunities, which is where they get a bulk of their points. I think they get 16 points a game from fast break opportunities. So I think that limits the Indiana Pacers' ceiling as an offensive team in the playoffs, which makes it even harder and gives an even better case for the Bucks, which I didn't think about as much until you said just then. But are you done, or can...
I've got one more.
Okay, go ahead.
And that is how the series will go. So I never feel truly confident. You never feel truly confident in your team to close out a game. So I say the Bucks will lose at least one home game. They'll probably take one away as well. And final prediction, I have Bucks in 6. Shout out Brandon Jennings, Bucks and 6. But yeah, they'll push us definitely for a couple games. I can see a game where, Halley's shooting efficiently, taking more shots, and Siakam's playing well, and the Pacers defense is clamping Dame and he's shooting inefficiently for a couple games. I can definitely see that happening, as it happened earlier in the season. But I think overall, the experience, the pace of the playoffs, I think we get it done, hopefully.
So, I think this is the worst the Pacers are going to play in the entire series, because let me just go through some stats. Actually, I'll go through my order of what you've just said, and then I will go through some stats. But the most important player for the Bucks is Damian Lillard, like you said. He needs to stay hot. Otherwise, I'm not giving the Bucks a chance at all in this series. No chance. If Dame... Here's where I'm going to get into the stats. Damian Lillard has only... I say only. He's only had 7 back-to-back 30-point nights this year, therefore has a 17% chance of scoring a back-to-back.
Oh, they really dived deep into stats.
Yeah.
It's playoff time, though. It's
playoff time, and it's playoff Dame, which is where I'm giving him a higher percentage than that, obviously. I'm not going to say, because of what we've seen this year, I'm not going to say that it's certain that he's going to score a back-to-back really good game, because he's been so inconsistent this year. I just can't bet on Damian Lillard this year, unfortunately. For Indiana, I've got Haliburton builds confidence, as you said, 7 field goals. I think he had 4 players on his team shoot more field goals than him, which is fair enough. Nemhard and I forgot who else it was. I think it was Ben Shepherd. They both shot more than him, but they're 3-point shooters and they just sit in the corner and kick out options. Obviously, they're going to shoot a lot of shots. But then you had Siakam as well. So it's Haliburton builds confidence. It's his first playoffs series. No, it's not. Did the Kings? No, the Kings didn't make it 2 years ago, did they? It is his first playoff series. Wow, I didn't even realize that. It's his first playoff series, so it's nerves going into the playoffs. You don't know what to expect. It elevates so much more than a normal person would probably think. You think about basketball tournaments, even when you're like us. You go from regular season to playoffs. It is
different feel.
Substantial. You feel different. The atmosphere is different. It's a completely different game. You can't imagine how it is with, 30,000... I don't know if they have that many NBA games, but 30,000 fans, 20,000 fans. It's just a whole different thing, and there's so much pressure on you as the leader of the team. And that's, again, why I say that the Indiana Pacers, that last game was their worst game that they're going to play.
Well, you'd hope so if they're losing by 20 quite easily.
And then another key for Indiana is hitting open shots, because they didn't do that whatsoever. Again, Ben Shepherd, Nemhard didn't hit open shots, which they usually do. That's why they're such good offense, because they do hit open shots and they get on the break. So how I've got the matchup to unfold. So after game 1, it's obvious that Indiana needs to pick up offensive momentum. And yeah, we won't get back-to-back poor offensive Indiana nights, because they're that good of an offense. I don't think it's going to happen again. Maybe the Giannis absence is the best thing for Damian Lillard.
Maybe. Build the confidence.
Because he can shoot more volume than he's shot all year, because Giannis has been very consistent with his games. And he can catch a rhythm, which we saw him catch in Portland when he didn't have another option. When he just put up volume shots, he caught fire, he had big games. So maybe that hires his chance of scoring back-to-back 30s and having big nights. You've got Bobby Portis as well, who played really well the other night. I'm trying to think again. I think AJ had a few good shots. We had Brook Lopez, Splash Mountain, who wasn't good in the first half.
Chris Middleton at 23.
Chris Middleton, sorry. First half, he was extremely good. Second half, he probably kept it up better than anyone else did on the Bucks. And that brings me to the Pacers had the fourth worst first half net rating out of any team in any game this season.
Really?
They had the fourth worst offensive and defense combined in any game and a half this entire season. And they were the better team in the second half. They beat the Bucks in the second half. You can say that's the Bucks taking the foot off the pedal because they've already won. They're up by 25.
I think so, but that's giving benefit.
But it's a playoff series, and you can never be too sure. And even when they did see the the Pacers make runs. They put Damian Lillard back in. He couldn't work it out. So I think if we go off that second half, which is more of the Indiana that we know, then even though it wasn't their best half that they've played, and it wasn't their offensive rating wasn't up to par with what they've been playing all season, I think it's going to be tough. And that's without Tyrese Halliburton playing well either. He barely shot in the second half as well, even though they were building momentum and confidence. So I've got the Pacers 4-2.
Really? 4-2?
4-2. 6 games, Pacers.
This is no Giannis?
There's no Giannis. Pacers offense will overwhelm the Bucks' lackluster defense without Giannis and won't match it on the offensive end. They don't have the offensive input.
Bro's a hater.
They don't have the offensive input that the Indiana Pacers have. And even though the Pacers are a terrible defensive team, the Bucks aren't a good defensive team either.
No, they're not.
And with their record in the second, since they've...
Pat Bev's going to clamp everyone on the court.
Pat Bev played well as well.
He did.
First half, he had a really good game and facilitated like I've never seen him facilitate on Philly. So maybe
better fit, but yeah, we'll come back to this. The really crucial game that decides, whether your prediction is right or my prediction is right is today at 10 a.m. So
the Bucks are only just over 500. No, okay, I think they're 600 maybe.
Yeah, they're a bit over.
With Doc Rivers, I'm talking as the coach, and that's with Giannis. So I'm just a little bit scared for them because even without Tyrese Halliburton, the Indiana Pacers have come away with wins because of Siakam having big games and the team around them. They're just a really good deep offensive team, even though they're pretty shocking on defense. That's all we had to say about the Pacers and Bucks, wasn't it?
Yeah, pretty much.
We had our differences.
Rivalry.
We've got our differences with both the Philly series and Milwaukee.
That makes for good content.
Equals out
when the series finishes.
Yeah, we both hate each other's teams. No, I don't hate the Bucks. Oh, I do hate the Bucks.
Come on, man.
So Orlando and Cleveland, obviously, first 2 games have been ugly for both teams because Orlando, first of all,
offense.
Cannot produce offense to save their lives, which I didn't see really coming in the playoffs. But when you put it in perspective, they're not a good 3-point shooting team, and the Cavs have a really good interior defense, so they're forced to shoot threes. So it does make sense. The keys to success are the Magic catching fire from 3. So far, they're shooting 23% on 36 attempts per game. That's 23% on threes, when they've been shooting as much as pretty much more than they've shot all season. The key for the Cavs is Donovan Mitchell scores over 20 points per game. Because since he was back from his injury, he was really inconsistent. He had like multiple games where he had less than 20 points and they couldn't get on a roll whatsoever, and it was definitely due to him because whenever he scores over 20 points, they win. He scored 20.
Again, from looking at the first couple of games of this series, it seemed like he'll be able to do that.
He scored 31 in his first game and then scored 23 yesterday. So I think if the Cavs can just keep up the shooting and the offensive production, then it's going to outdo the Magic's offensive production, even though the Magic have actually been better defensively than the Cavs this series. So I'm not even going to discuss this too much because I think it's pretty clear in my opinion. I think the most important player for the Magic is Franz Wagner, because even though he has been putting up threes, and he's been actually making them, I think, better than he had previously in the regular season. But you're going to have production from Paolo. You just need to match production with another player. You need 2 players who are going to play well on offense. I'm not going to compare it to Philly because obviously Philly's offense is a lot better. But when you've got 2 players playing really well on offense, then you can get in close games. And then you just need a lucky shooter from 3 as a third option. Then I think they maybe could come away with a win if they get a really good Franz game, along with a Paolo game and a little bit better on the shooting production. It doesn't need to be 40%, but even like a 32%, I'm going to say, is their cap. And they might win a game. And then the most important for the Cavs is Donovan Mitchell. Like I said, when he scores, they win because they're going to keep it up on the defensive end because they've got the Twin Towers in the paint. And then even though they've got good wing defenders as well, Georges Niang is an underrated defensive player.
Shout out Georges Niang.
Okoro, a good defensive player. It's just that Garland point guard matchup that makes it hard. But I think with Jalen Suggs not being a super good offensive player, I think that Darius Garland can at least keep up and not give away 3 points. And he's an NBA defender. He's not Trae Young. I think he'll defend well enough. That's shots to Trae Young. Previous matchups, I didn't even look it up because I don't think it matters.
It's
2-2. Wow. I thought it'd be more one-sided than that, but I don't think it matters anyway. All right, apologies. We're over here now.
Sorry. Yeah.
Technical difficulties.
As per. But,
As per every single week.
And you notice the Celtics looking a bit bare, but we will get this filled. I'm saying it so we actually do it.
Yeah, we've said it before though, and it hasn't happened, but we will because we'll level up and
yeah, more posters, more jerseys, cool stuff.
Maybe get some cooler shoes. No, I'm playing. They're cool.
The infrareds?
We
We're talking about
I think I was
talking about Donovan.
Yeah, Donovan. He just needs to score. How the matchup will unfold. I think from the first two games, I think we can say that the Orlando Magic can't produce offense with their current team in the playoff intensity. And Cavs will continue to be impenetrable. Yes, that's the right word. In the paint with Allen and Mobley. So it's a 4-0 sweep.
Really? Sweet.
4-0 sweep. I don't think the Magic coming out with the game because Donovan's in form, as we said. And
sweet.
Who's gonna score the points for? I mean, you can say Paolo, Paolo, but you've got the Twin Towers in the paint, and he's not a super effective 3-point shooter. He's gonna have to rely on mid-range games.
Least, from my view, I think at least a couple of games we have good games. Yeah. So to match what you said, I had the same most important players for both teams. Donovan Mitchell. Obviously, we talked about his inconsistent scoring in the regular season and how he has been stepping it up, but he is crucial for the Cavs offense. And Franz, for the Magic, also his distribution of the ball. I think it's really important, getting the Magic good looks, even though they're not shooting well. Better looks does lead to more efficient shots. So, yeah, and taking the ball out of Paolo's hands when he's being guarded by the Twin Towers and scoring efficiently is crucial for the Magic at the moment. And then key to success, I said the Cavs force them to shoot the three because they're so inefficient at the three right now. They're going to beat you by making a million threes. Then you'd rather that because they're protecting the paint at a high level anyway. Obviously Mobley and Jarrett Allen, so it's really difficult for them to score inside. Let them have the outside shots, guard the paint, and that's what they're doing pretty much, and it seems to be working. And yeah, the Magic, I've just got stopping Donovan, which is a very tall task. I don't know if you switch Suggs onto Donovan.
He has been playing.
He has been playing on him?
Yeah.
He's been on Garland.
Garland, well, it depends. Cole Anthony,
Yeah,
but
true.
the less better defender has been on Cole Anthony.
That's what I assumed, but I thought you said something else before. That's my bad. But yeah, I don't know how you're going to stop him. But you're going to have to stop him somehow because he's just going to score and it's going to be over. But even though I do think the Cavs will win this series, I do think Orlando take at least one home, I think. And maybe two. Cavs get it done. I have Cavs in 6. I don't think it's going to be a sweep, personally. I think at home, the Magic will get at least one playoff game. And that'll be good for their franchise, build some experience, build some crowd energy. First playoffs since 2019. Augustine against the Raptors.
Yeah.
So, yeah, shout out Orlando. They've been a very fun team to watch this year, but I just don't think the offensive capabilities live up to playoff basketball, unfortunately.
No, they don't have the offensive pace that the Cavs have. And I think as long as Donovan scores efficiently, even if he shoots like 40% and scores 20 points, I'm taking the Cavs. And we're already halfway through. In my case, we're already halfway through if they sweep them. And it doesn't look like it's going to switch. It doesn't look like it's going to swing unless they can pick it up from 3-point range, which Orlando haven't done all season. So I'm counting Orlando out. I'm sorry. I'm sorry.
I think they have a chance, but their chance is definitely getting slimmer and slimmer as time goes on.
It's an ugly series as well. I've watched both games and it's not super enjoyable. No.
Going over to the West, and the 1 and 8 we have the Thunder versus the Pelicans. I'll take this one away. So the most important players, I've got J-Dub for the Thunder because SGA is Mr. Consistent. He's going to score. I don't remember what he had in game 1.
Wasn't super impressive.
Yeah,
I know he didn't shoot as well as he usually did, but he shot well when it mattered. Fourth quarter, last 6 minutes, I think he shot really well. Hit some really big shots.
Yeah, again, like we've been talking about all season with the Thunder pretty much, it's about that second star that comes with Shea. In scoring, I think that's J-Dub, especially with his defensive prowess as well. We're talking about them in the NBA Duos video. You rate them very highly. So I think it's time that they really, shut the Pelicans down and show why they're the 1 seed. And then for the Pelicans, I have CJ. I've seen the memes. I've seen the disrespect on CJ's name.
Mm-hmm.
But if he shoots efficiently from 3, distributes the ball well, Brandon Ingram is going to play his game. He's going to shoot middies. He's
been bad though. He's been bad, and I don't think he's
CJ or Brandon Ingram.
Ingram. I don't think his stats back up his impact either. He's not greatly impactful.
That's what I'm saying. Is I think CJ with the ball in his hands will be more impactful, and I think it's up to him to, steer the offense without Point Zion there and knock down the 3 at hopefully an efficient level, and that will get them. I don't want to say back in this series because unfortunately I don't think it will, but it would give them a fighting chance. And I think the key to success for the OKC Thunder are having multiple scorers. We've seen all year that when they've won games, it's because Shea has dropped 31. J-Dub and Chet have had 16 to 22 each. Gideon, Dort have contributed sometimes. Why is that funny?
They've contributed sometimes. Little side note.
Do. Sometimes they do, sometimes they don't.
Sometimes you get a good game from one of them and not the other.
Josh Giddey had 2 points the other day. Yeah. But yeah, it's about having multiple scorers, really stretching the Pelicans defenders because they do have good defenders. Really spacing out the Pelicans defenders because they do have good defenders in Herb Jones, Trey Murphy, etc., Jose Alvarado. Spreading them out and making them guard the most offensively. What's the word I'm looking for? Offensively efficient player at the time. And with multiple scorers, I think the Thunder it's too much for the Pelicans to handle. And then for the Pelicans, I'd shooting the 3 efficiently and containing Shea. I know it's hard to contain Shea, but I think they did a good job in game 1. He didn't shoot as efficiently as he usually does and didn't score as high as he usually does. And they gave them a fighting chance within the final however many minutes in a low-scoring game, which I think is a win for the Thunder, for the Pelicans.
Mm-hmm.
I think that gives them a positive sign that they can at least be competitive in the series.
They limited the 3rd best offense in the league. So.
They did. So I think that's a positive sign for them. In previous matchups, OKC won 2 of 3 in generally close games. So we saw a repeat of that in game 1, that it was generally close. And how I think the series will go is the Thunder win both games at home. Pelicans take 1 at home, and then the Thunder finish Thunder in 5. Unfortunately, I think the Pelicans played to a high standard, not to the ceiling, but to a high standard on their level, and the OKC Thunder underperformed in game 1, and I just don't think that's going to happen throughout the rest of the series.
Yep.
So yeah, I have Thunder in 5.
So for OKC, their key to success, obviously with all of these, we've already had a little sneak peek, so we get to see sort of how this would unfold. But it this confirmed my doubts I had for OKC in terms of crashing the glass on every shot, because they got completely out-rebounded by the Pelicans, by Valanciunas, who was unbelievable. Offensive rebounding, we've talked about it this season. Chet's not the greatest rebounder. He's skinny. They don't have many other... They're a small lineup entirely.
And the Thunder have struggled with rebounding all year. We talked about it in what every NBA playoff team needs to improve on. That was mine for the Thunder, was rebounding.
Yeah, and it's proved it in this series as well. So they got to crash everything because they do everything else to a T, the OKC Thunder. They have a facilitator, they have multiple scorers, and they're an unbelievable defense as well. They have a defensive, probably 2 all-defensive players. We have Shea and we have Chet. And then J-Dub's a really good defender as well. So their starting lineup is really good defensively. But then it also brings me to another defender that they've got, and this is my most important player, and it's Cason Wallace. Because when I was watching the first game, and he completely locked down CJ in the last quarter, and I think Cason was the reason that they won, because he picked up the energy in the building for the OKC Thunder, because they have an electric home crowd. When they saw the defensive plays that Cason was performing on defense, it completely turned around the energy. They got fast break opportunities, which led to scoring, which led to J-Dub heating up. It led to more energy from Chet on defense as well. And then also Shea hitting shots. They're like everything transformed as soon as Cason was
late.
That was yeah, exactly. It just everything picked up as soon as Cason Wallace came out. So he played CJ for 2.5 minutes and kept him to 2 of 5 shooting, which, I mean, it's below 50%, but these were crucial minutes where CJ had the opportunity to advance the lead. Cason Wallace came out in the end of the game against CJ and made a super important defensive play. And then down the floor, I think a minute later, Shea hit that fadeaway against CJ to ice the game. It just all turned around with Cason Wallace. And when you've got the defensive backcourt, the defensive backcourt as well as the defensive front court, I think you're going to really limit what New Orleans can do offensively throughout the entire game. And when you have a really good... This wasn't a good Thunder game, in my opinion. I think anyone can agree with that. When you have good Thunder games and you're playing that sort of defense, I think it doesn't really give the Pelicans a chance, especially when they don't have Zion, who's their most important player, the most impactful player, and has so much gravity and opens up the floor for them. For the Pelicans, they just need to rely on CJ, which they didn't want to do because in history, not a great playoff performer, and also he's never been a first option on a team ever. So having that role, I mean, you could say Brandon Ingram's their best offensive player, but after game 1, I feel like CJ's a better scorer than him. When they need buckets, I think they should go to CJ. But yeah, it just the fact that they've got their best scorer as CJ really limits their ceiling, and I think that they might take one game. I think they might get a lucky game at home, especially with their defense and offensive rebounding, because you're going to have offensive rebounds leading to extra 3-point shots, because often when you get the offensive rebound, you find a shooter in the corner because people are crashing the board. So I think they're going to get extra 3-point shots in one game and then going to shoot efficiently and they're going to win one. But I've got, OKC winning 4 and then Pelicans 1.
So Thunder and 5. It's not so great. It's not so great for a change.
Did I first agree?
Yeah, this is our first in terms of, we said Celtics in 4, but that's
clear
a give
as day. Yeah. Nice.
Nuggets and Lakers.
Lakers. It's just unfortunate what happened yesterday in terms of...
Had Magic Johnson sick. He couldn't even tweet about it.
He couldn't tweet about it. And Los Angeles Lakers fans were distraught because I think they realized that the Nuggets, when they win 2, I don't think... But they're just the better team, and Los Angeles have never been able to beat them. We saw it last year in the conference finals. But they were up by 20 going into the fourth quarter. Up by 20 going to the fourth.
If you're not going to win that game, then, you got to take your chances.
And that was a bad 3 quarters, especially from Jamal Murray, who just flipped it around in the last quarter. He started getting to his mid-range game, which is what the commentators were saying as well, which was really important for them. He wasn't hitting his threes. He just needs to go back to where he's reliable, and that's the mid-range. And he ended up winning the game on a mid-range shot as well over the best defender in the league. He'll say he's the best defender, but He is one of the best
happened?
defenders.
Jamal Murray hit a shot.
Exactly. He just hit a shot. Yeah, just the Lakers, even at home, I just don't think they've got a chance because Denver just came off a game winner and they're going to come out firing because they want it to be a sweep. They want to have a little break before their next series. And yeah, we've even seen Jokic not have. Obviously, he had a pretty good last quarter, and he's always going to make plays. He's always going to be the most important player on the court. But even him yesterday, I think going into the fourth, he had 18, 10, and 8, which, I mean, for any player, that's really good. But that's Jokic.
But not for him.
Exactly. But even then, he's the most impactful player on the court. And then, okay, I'm going to say my key player for the Nuggets is Michael Porter Jr., in my opinion. Because in the first game, first of all, he hasn't. I think I've seen him pass the ball once this entire series. Literally, I'm not even kidding.
Never swinged a rock.
Exactly. Even when he's got a defender ready to close him out, they know that he's going to shoot it because he never passes. They jump, contest it. It's just money. He's got a high release point and he just can't be blocked, and it's just cash every single time. I think he shot like 40% from three on. I think he's made 5 every game. He's been super, super good. He scored 19 yesterday on unbelievable efficiency. And he's a lengthy defender. He's gonna limit what the Lakers can do on offense, which has been really good. The Lakers, the reason they've got out to these leads is obviously they're not the best 3-point shooting team, but they don't take a lot of shots. They have taken a lot of shots, which I think is a really good thing for them because they have the pieces to hit shots. Gabe Vincent, good 3-point shooter. Austin Reeves, D'Angelo Russell, even though he had a terrible first game. The thing about D'Angelo Russell, he always, whenever he has a little bit of criticism thrown his way, we saw it when he was on the trading block in the middle of the season. He came out the next game after he heard about these rumors and got all upset. For a week straight, he scored like 30 points per game. And then we've just seen it. In the first game, he shot poorly. Everyone was on his ass. And then this game, he came out and shot really, really well. Unfortunately, not when it mattered most, but in the first 3 quarters, he did. So when you've got these shooters, when you're hitting shots, I think that gives Los Angeles a chance. I don't think they're going to win the series, but I think they'll take one game. But it's just too hard for them because Denver are going to be on a roll and they don't have a good record against Denver. I think they'll be lucky to take one at home.
Yeah, so I pretty much agree with everything you said there. The most important player, I have D'Lo/shooters for the Lakers. We saw in that first game when the shooters were inconsistent, especially D'Lo, the Lakers just didn't seem in it at all, really. And then when they were shooting efficiently, the Lakers were up 20 until a certain point. But, that's the key for them. And that's why D'Lo is the most important player. I think LeBron and AD are going to play to a high level. AD has his consistent and inconsistent nights, but I have faith that in the playoffs he's been playing pretty well so far. Yeah, so I don't know if you guys just saw.
We didn't notice that the camera cut out. But
why is always the technical difficulties? But yeah,
it's ghetto. This is a ghetto setup. It's going to get better.
We're upgrading. We'll be investing back into the pod, but hopefully you're still sticking around. And my most important player for the Nuggets is Jamal Murray. We've seen what playoff Jamal Murray is capable of. We saw what happened in that final quarter, the other game. And he will step up, but you just need to make sure of that because in the first 3 quarters, I think halftime he had 4 points maybe. And that's
bad shooting as well. That's
bad shooting, and that's why they were in the hole that they were in. And when he decided to step up, that's how they worked their way back into the game. So I think he's a really crucial, important player in this series. Obviously, Jokic is important, but he's going to, put up his stat line of 20, 25 plus, 10 boards and 8 assists. That's going to happen on efficient shooting. So that's why Jamal Murray is the most important player on Denver. And the key to success, I said, for the Lakers, shoot the 3 ball well. It's been their downfall or their saving grace all season. When D'Lo and co are shooting the ball well, they're working into the game. And when they can get multiple players involved into the game, get Austin Reeves involved, get D'Lo involved, etc. And also, I had written down, don't let Rui guard Jokic. Because, I think AD should be on Jokic the whole time. It's playoff basketball. You got to make Jokic work for the bucket. And even though he's probably going to score a lot of the time, AD is a top. We had him third in our Defensive Player of the Year ballot. And I saw a lot of Lakers fans complain that the rotations and Rui being on Jokic, and I agree to some point. Rui is a good defender, but Jokic is an unstoppable offensive force. So it's difficult in that situation. It's hard to control Jokic. It's hard to contain him. Darvin Ham doesn't even know. In his post-match press conference, he doesn't even know how to control him.
But nobody knows.
No one knows. Freaky. And then in the previous matchups, Nuggets were 3 of 3. That's self-explanatory. Now 4 of 4. And how the series will go, I think Lakers still won at home. Probably the first game at home, keep it competitive, but I just think the Nuggets run over the top of them. Nuggets in 5. Okay. Another agreeance there.
Another agreeance. I forgot to mention 2 things. First of all, with what you said about Rui. Sorry, not Rui. In the first game, he was good against Jokic, pretty much as good as you can be. And I think the only thing about having AD as the primary defender against Jokic is Jokic can't be stopped in terms of his jump shot. He just shoots overhead, and we've seen multiple times before. I think we've even spoken about it earlier this year when the Lakers and Nuggets played. AD, no one can block that shot. No one can block the overhead shot. I don't think it matters in terms of that matchup, because I think Jokic is just going to score at will when he's getting into his jump shot game, which is pretty much what he goes back to when he hasn't scored in a while. He goes to that mid-range game and he just hits those mid-range shots. But the thing about having AD off the ball is that Jokic is such a good passer to cutting, to cuts. When players are cutting, Jokic is going to find them. So I think it's so important to have AD off the ball as a help defender for any cuts, because AD can get to a shot in a matter of seconds when it's in the paint. He's such a good defender. He's got active hands when he's in the paint. A lot of interceptions. So I just think, I personally think it's better to have AD off the ball. That's my opinion.
I just think I'm pretty straightforward. Best defender on best offensive player, and they match up well at the center position.
Okay.
I think Rui might be a bit small to guard Jokic, but
yeah.
But I get what you're saying, the fact that he's probably going to score either way, so you might as well.
I think that's why the Lakers haven't done it, though. That's why Roy has been on Jokic. Roy. It's just a weird way I say it. I know his name is Rui. But I think that's why they have played AD off the ball to do that. And I've watched the games and it's actually worked quite well. And that's a big reason why Jokic was limited in that second game going into the fourth. So that's just one thing I've got. And then the second thing I've got is I just forgot to mention the pick and roll from Jamal Murray and Jokic, because it's the best play in basketball. And it's the reason they got back in the game in the fourth quarter as well. We talk about Jamal Murray hitting his mid-range shots, but that was all off Jokic pick and roll. So I just forgot to mention that, and I wanted to mention that because going forward, I think even if they're down in any situation, they can go back to that and they're going to score points. So that's what makes them a contender in my opinion, because even when they don't have shooters shooting well, they've always got the best pick and roll in the league and the best player in the league. So I just wanted to mention it.
Yeah, well, I think Nuggets are going to win anyway. But yeah, an interesting one there. And next we've got the Timberwolves and the Suns, and this game is happening right now. If you figure out when we're recording this, the Suns are up 5. And Ant is shooting 20%, which is very interesting. Might throw a spanner in the works in my prediction. No, not really. I'm going to stick to my guns. But the most important players, obviously, for the Timberwolves, it's Anthony Edwards. Is he going to have the game one that he had? And I know they won by a massive amount. I think it was 25 in the end. Is he going to have that type of game every game in the series? No. But if he gets that type of game the majority of the series, I think the Timberwolves have as good a chance as they will have. And then for the Suns, I've got D-Book, because KD, for years he's been consistent, can be a consistent scorer. D-Book, we saw when he shot inefficiently, I think he shot like around 30%, 33% last game on, and just didn't contribute to the scoring nearly enough as that second option. And when him, KD, and Bradley Beal as like a side are coming along, firing, it's really hard to stop. They do have a top 10 offense. But yeah, that's why I've got D-Book as my most important player for the Suns. And then the keys to success, I said for the T-Wolves, minimizing the big three. And with their defense, the best defense in the league all season, I think they do have a good chance of doing that. I mean, right now, D-Book has 13 points. Oh, he is shooting very badly though. 37%. Yeah, and Bradley Beal is shooting 37%, KD 50%. So, I mean, they are doing a good job of minimizing the effects of the big three. And for the Suns, I've got to get the ball out of Ant's hands, which I think they are doing in this game so far, which is why they're ahead, even though they're shooting inefficiently.
Mm-hmm.
Making someone else beat you, and I think Mike Conley is the leading scorer for the T-Wolves right now. He's got 12. So if you're gonna get beaten by Mike Conley, you'd rather get beaten by Unk than Ant,
Yeah.
and keep that momentum shifting backwards. When Ant's rolling, when he's talking trash, the T-Wolves are playing good defense. It's all rolling for them, and we've seen. I think people are underestimating them in this series from the predictions I've seen, because all season long, or most of the season, they were the 1 seed, and they're playing great basketball. And you might say they're an inexperienced team. But this Suns big three have only just formed together. As a whole, they're inexperienced in terms of chemistry and in terms of depth. So it's a one to think about. This is the other one that I was thinking about really heavily over the past week.
Mm-hmm.
The previous matchups, interestingly enough, the Suns won 3 of 3. I didn't get to watch any of those games.
I'll tell you why.
Yeah.
Because Anthony Edwards has averaged 14 points over those 3 games.
I did actually know that. Yeah, I heard that I think I was listening to Numbers on the Board.
That might be where I got it from as well, maybe.
Shout out Kenny Beecham and co. Yeah, and yeah, he averaged 14 points, but I think, again, they were saying in that podcast that it wasn't really due to the effect of the Suns because they're not a great defensive team. I just think it was, the fluctuations of being inconsistent as a younger player.
Mm-hmm.
And how the series will go, I said down to the wire. I said exchange home games and big game 7, Wolves in 7. I'm going the Wolves. I've seen nearly everyone else go the Suns. But I think, from what all the numbers on the board, boys went Suns. So I think the Wolves win it in 7. They've been the better team all season long. I think they've got the better chemistry, the better defense, and it just depends on if Ant can get going to a playoff standard. And I think he can. I think he's shown the potential to do that. So I've got Wolves in 7, but definitely a series that I'll be keeping my eyes peeled on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. I've got a lot of the same as you. I just want to talk about the Timberwolves defense because the way that they played the big 3 in game 1 was really interesting, and I haven't seen it actually thrown at the Timberwolves all season. Usually you double Kevin Durant because he's one of the best offensive players in the league, and you want to get the ball out of his hands. But then that leads to swing. Like, once you double, there's going to be someone open. Even if you don't get it to them immediately, you swing to the next person and they find the open man, which is usually Grayson Allen open in the corner. But the way that they've played him, they've had Cat on Kevin Durant. They don't double. They rely on Cat being a good defender, a versatile defender on Kevin Durant as a tall defender. And then if Kevin Durant misses the shot, then that's good. If he swings the ball, then they've got someone defending the next player. They don't get open shots for Grayson Allen. I think he took 4 in the first game and shot poorly because he always had a defender on him. So I think that adjustment to the Timberwolves, I think obviously they're a good enough team to do that because you're going to have teams where you've got one liability on the court who will get beaten off the dribble. But the Timberwolves, they have good defensive players across the board. Nickeil Alexander-Walker especially, I'm going to shout him out as the defender of Bradley Beal and Devin Booker at interchanges, and they had bad game 1 games as well.
And they're shooting inefficiently right now.
So. This game here, which I found really interesting because I hope that they're still implementing that defense, which I'm sure they are. It worked in the first game. But then it all comes down to the Timberwolves' offense, because Anthony Edwards, as we mentioned, hasn't played as well against the Suns the entire season. He had a really good game a couple of days ago in game 1. But I think it all just relies on him being the superstar that he really is. Because in the playoffs, he steps it up. In his career, he's averaged 25 points in the playoffs, which is good because he's a really young player. And to have that impact immediately, as soon as you step into the playoffs, I think he's going to be a playoff player, regarded as a playoff player for the rest of his career. A little bit of a Jimmy Butler sort of thing. Not as bad in the regular season as Jimmy Butler usually is, but he's going to be one of those players to step up all the time because he's got that competitive spirit. We all know it.
Yep.
And a potential future face of the NBA, which we've also talked about. So it all comes down to me for the Timberwolves to win this series is consistent offensive games from Anthony Edwards. And if not, then I think they're going to find it hard. Because the Suns, even though this year they haven't been amazing defensively, we've seen actual effort from the Suns, which was their biggest point of the most disappointing thing that we saw this year for the Suns, the lack of effort. But they've turned it up. It's playoff time. They've turned it up. They've turned it up. And I think we're going to get defensive pressure from the Phoenix Suns. And if they can turn it on offense, then I'm not counting the Suns out either. But I'm still going to go Timberwolves. You and I both agree.
Wow.
And I've got them winning in 6 games.
6?
It's not going to 7.
It's not going to 7.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, see, I think it'll be very close. And right now it's 51-50.
I think they come out and win this game because it's going to be a bad first half from Anthony Edwards, but I trust the fact that he's going to come out in the second half. He's too competitive, I think, to let a game like this slip, especially at home. Then
Mike Conley leading the group with 14 points.
Shout out Unk, the GOAT. No, but
shout out.
Phoenix might take a couple home games, and that's where I rely on them winning 2 games. But I think that the Timberwolves defense is too strong, and even though they don't have the Phoenix Suns have playoff experience because you've got Grayson Allen separately, individually they've got great experience, but together they don't have that experience, and that sort of matches what the Timberwolves have because obviously they made the playoffs last year. And they have been in the playoffs, at least the play-in, the last few years. So they lack deep playoff experience, but I think in the first round they can come away with this.
Yeah, that's definitely a must-see matchup, I think.
I'm sad that I'm missing it right now.
Yeah, well, it's about to be halftime. You can watch the second half after we're done.
True.
The next and final matchup, the 4 vs 5, it's the Clippers and Mavericks.
One of the most interesting ones.
Take it away, mate.
I think it's you this time.
Is it me?
I think so. Isn't it? Oh, no, sorry.
No,
Yeah, it's me. Sorry. It was a bad game, in my opinion, for the Dallas Mavericks, at least on offense, because Luka wasn't himself in the first 3 quarters. I think a big part of that is Paul George limiting him. But then again, it's not going to happen, in my opinion, in the next few games because Luka Doncic is too much of an offensive threat. We've seen all season. There's no one that can really guard him, and he's going to get up his 11 assists, 30 points at least every single game. He did drop 33 last game. And I think that the team that they've built is really good. I like how it matches up against the Clippers. Because they've got interior presence, and we saw how good at interior defense they were. I think Gafford had multiple blocks, and then Lively when he was on the court. That's the best defense that I've seen him play all year, which is really impressive because he's a rookie, and rookies coming out in their first game and playing really well, being really impactful.
It's a good sign.
It's a good sign, and with pick and roll with Curry and Luka, he's the best pick and roll partner that they have on the team. So I think it's really good. Yeah, but the Clippers, I'm putting the first game to a James Harden masterclass, and I don't think it's going to happen consistently for the rest of the series. Even though James Harden, we have seen him go off in playoff games last year. He had a 40-point game when he was on Philadelphia. But I think this year, obviously they won't rely on him as much as they rely on Paul George. So so he won't get the sort of shots that he got last year when Embiid was out in that game. But I'm just not going to rely on Harden playing well this entire series. But the effort from Russell Westbrook really, he just matches playoff intensity, especially because we haven't seen him on super good teams in the past. We've seen him on the Rockets, of course, but they made the conference finals. But they've got a different sort of team this year where he's less impactful than he has been in previous years. They rely on him off the bench, and I think bringing energy off the bench is something that's super underrated when you've got a short rotation in the playoffs. And he really brought that, and that was one of their keys to success in the first game. So I don't know, when is Kawhi coming back? Do we know this?
I'm not sure.
Whether it's the second half of the series, I think when they have Kawhi back, I really like the Clippers' chance, because I just don't think they have the defenders to limit that high octane Los Angeles Clippers offense. But then again, we can see that match from Dallas, because they've been an improved team in the last quarter of the season. Pretty much the best team in the last quarter of the season. So for me, the key to success for Dallas is production from Kyrie Irving and Luka Doncic. That's a bit of a boring one, but
He's questionable.
next game,
Yeah.
cool. If he comes back, then it's going to be a tighter series. If he doesn't, if he's not the same sort of player, then I think I'd give it to the Dallas Mavericks in 6 games. But I think if Kawhi comes back, it's going to 7, and I'm giving it to the Clippers. Because the keys to success for the Dallas Mavericks, Kyrie and Luka, we didn't see them play as well, even though Kyrie in the last quarter was really good. And he brought them back up to the Clippers multiple times. And then PJ Washington, who I've been really high on all year, and I said that he's pretty much their most important piece on their team all year, shot really well. Not from 3, but he was impactful from mid-range and as a cutter as well. And he was one of the reasons why they didn't get blown out. So the Dallas Mavericks, I think, they're not going to be the same team next game as they were in game 1, because you don't get back-to-back bad Luka Doncic games in the playoffs. And Kyrie Irving is Kyrie Irving. I think they're going to be fine going into the rest of the series, but it's going to be close, I think. Every game will be within 5, in my opinion. It's going to be one of the best series.
Yeah, so a really close series in my opinion. Another one that I flip-flopped back between. The most important players for the Clippers, I have Paul George, as someone who's so impactful on the offensive and defensive end for them, especially with Kawhi remaining questionable. I think he will probably come back either next game or the game after. And we know the matchup with PG and Luka, that Luka hit the game winner over him in the bubble. So yeah, I think as a veteran player, someone who's had playoff experience, I think it's really important for Paul George to step up, especially if Kawhi is off the floor, and really help lead this Clippers offense and defense. And then for the Mavericks, I have Kyrie being consistent, which he played, I think he had 31 in the first game.
I'm trying to remember.
Around 30. So he played all right. But we need to see that continue for the whole series as playoff basketball, and especially if, a Mavericks third option isn't going to come through with great numbers, which I don't think will happen, unfortunately, for the Mavs. So I think it's important for him to upkeep his offensive output. Playoff Luka is going to be playoff Luka, even though he did have a below average game for him in the first game of the series. He's going to come back and he's going to get the flamethrower out. And he always plays well in this matchup, as we've seen in past years, even though it is a slightly different team.
Mm-hmm.
The keys to success for the Clippers, I said all players impacting. I think they're a team that not relies, but they benefit off of all their players impacting. Talk about Russell Westbrook off the bench providing that. Harden, when they're playing well, when they're bringing the energy and intensity, especially down the stretch, the Clippers are a very hard team to beat, especially with that veteran leadership. And then for the Mavericks, I've got non-star scoring, because even though they Kyrie and Luka didn't have their best of best games, I think they both still scored over 30. And
33 and 31.
Yeah, and they got very convincingly beat which was a bit of a worry for me from a maths perspective of if that can happen one game, it can happen again.
But I don't know, because it's the first half, they only managed to score 31 points in the first half. It was a 29-point half until I think they got a Tim Hardaway bucket in the last 10 seconds of the first quarter. So it was almost a 29-point first half. And it was due to Los Angeles' defense, which was really, really, really good. I'm not going to discredit it, and I'm not going to say that it was because Luka and Kyrie were shooting but poorly. They didn't get open shots, and that was a big factor. Sorry, one thing I want to say as well, I think Josh Green needs more minutes. I think they need to lower Tim Hardaway minutes and raise Josh Green minutes, because...
Not just because he's Australian, but...
No, he's a really, really good defender.
He is.
Really good defender, and they need three-point production. He's one of the best three-point shooters. He's been almost one of their best three-point shooters in the last quarter of the season. And Tim Hardaway just isn't good enough of a defender, in my opinion. He can be a spark plug off the bench, but in my opinion, when you've got the Los Angeles Clippers, one of the best offensive teams in the entire league, literally everyone on that team is a threat on any given night. Anyone can score 30 points in that starting lineup. Tim Hardaway just isn't a good enough defender. Give him a few minutes off the bench, try and get momentum rolling, but he's not a player that you're going to keep in. I think Josh Green is someone you can keep in because he's going to play on both sides of the court.
I feel like he benefits from playoff basketball.
100%. Players like him definitely thrive. Maxi Kleber was also a bit of a disappointment in the first game and was one of the reasons they weren't as good, because some easy rebounds, I remember. Sorry, this is all coming back to me. Fuck. The camera's off, but anyway, it's all coming back to me. Maxi Kleber dropping easy passes. I remember Luka got really mad at him in one play, which I don't know. I don't agree with that as a teammate yelling at a teammate for missing something. They're not trying to miss something. It's just a mistake. But then missing easy rebounds, letting the Clippers get offensive rebounds, which Zubac, by the way, had an unbelievable first game. They went to him strong in the first quarter. It is literally all coming back to me. Sorry, I just had to jog my memory for a second. I got it. Zubac had 20 points, 15 rebounds. His best, I'm going to say it's his best game all season. Wow. Because he completely dominated that Dallas big men. And I thought the Dallas big men would hold their own, but he proved that, first of all, Derek Lively and Gafford they're just too weak for him. He is an absolute force. He just backs them down, gets under the rim, puts up a shot, and it's easy.
On the offensive glass as well.
Definitely. And that's why I also wanted to talk about Maxi Kleber as well, because I think I already said it actually. He just wasn't good on the defensive glass, which is one of the easiest and most important things you can do on a basketball court, defensive rebound. So, yeah, Zubac's a big factor for them. And I think limiting Zubac rebounds, I don't think they can double team Zubac. I think that's what the Clippers want them to do in the paint, because then they got open shooters and they got so many offensive threats. But I don't think they can double Zubac. So he might have a really good series. This isn't just a one-game standout. I think he's going to keep it up.
Yeah, but anyway, to finish off, the Clippers won 2 of 3 of the regular season. And I think that the Clippers win both their home games. Mavericks take both their home games. I think the Clips finish it off. And I think I have Clips in 6.
Nice.
Which, I feel like this series could go either way depending on a wide number of factors. But I think from what I've seen and the faith that I have in the Clippers and the faith that I've had all season, I think they get it done. But, my heart wants to go to the Mavericks, but I think I have to go to the Clippers in 6. Yeah, but another close one. We're really being gifted with great matchups in these playoffs.
But sort of unfortunate first-round matchups for a lot of teams, because whether the Clippers or the Mavs lose, they're not first-round exit teams, in my opinion.
No, in many other years they're not. But this year it is too competitive.
Unfortunately, yeah. But fortunately, because we get so many good games, straight into the playoffs as well. All right, well, that'll pretty much do it. Hope you guys enjoyed the video. You've seen our predictions.
Let us
So
know yours.
Yeah, let us know yours, and if you agree with any of these, tell us if we had any poor takes. But yeah, we'll see you next week. I'm not sure if Game 7 will be done by then. We might have a few Game 7s, but we might know some matchups for the second round, which we're really keen to get into.
And we'll bring back some more game style things as well, some more extracurricular fun topics. Because this episode obviously has the most playoff matchups that it's going to have for the rest of the
It's going to be filled up with playoff sort of talk. So, and I don't know how, it's been a bit of a long episode as well.
I think so. About
so thanks for sticking around if you have this long. And yeah, we'll see you next week. Ciao.
Now remember, if you're on YouTube, like and subscribe.
I forgot to say that. Like and subscribe. 5-star rating on Spotify.
Peace.
See ya.